Lady Mary was young, and Lady Mary was fair. Lady Mary had many suitors, and of all her suitors, the bravest and most gallant and the richest was Mr. Fox. Lady Mary lived with her brothers, and she had met Mr. Fox when they visited their father's house in the country. Nobody knew where Mr. Fox came from, or where he lived, or how he had gained his great wealth. But of all her suitors, Mr. Fox was the bravest and most gallant and the richest, and Lady Mary loved him best of all. And so he asked her to marry him, and it was agreed. And as the time for their nuptials grew closer, Lady Mary asked Mr. Fox where they should live once they were married. "Ah," said Mr. Fox, "we shall live in my castle in the deepest, darkest part of the forest." But he never invited her there, and he never invited her brothers there. A short time before the wedding day, Mr. Fox told Lady Mary that he was going away for a few days on business, and Lady Mary decided that she would go and seek out Mr. Fox's castle in the deepest, darkest part of the forest. And so she did. And when she found it, this great castle, with a great gateway, with the portcullis up and the drawbridge down, and over the gate she read the words, "Be bold, be bold." She walked boldly through the gateway and into the courtyard, and she found that there was nobody about. So she made her way to the great door of the great hall, and there she read over the door the words, "Be bold, be bold, but not too bold." So, not too boldly, she walked through the door and into the great hall, a very fine hall with a very fine staircase running up to a long gallery. She climbed the staircase, she walked along the gallery, and at the end she found a small door, and over the door she read the words, "Be bold, be bold, but not too bold, lest that thy heart's blood doth run cold." Her blood running cold, she threw open the door, and there she found all the bodies and bones of Mr. Fox's previous wives, covered in blood. She ran along the gallery. She began to run down the stairs, but there she looked out into the courtyard and saw Mr. Fox dragging a poor woman behind him. And she was young, and she was fair, and she was rich, and on her finger there was a huge diamond ring. Lady Mary looked this way and that, and then found somewhere to hide behind a pile of wine barrels. And she watched from her vantage point, and she saw Mr. Fox drag the poor woman into the great hall, and she was young, and she was fair, and she was rich, and she had the great diamond ring on her finger, which Mr. Fox was trying to get off, pulling and pulling and pulling, but he could not get it off. And so he took his sword and he hacked it off, and the hand went flying through the air and landed in Lady Mary's lap. She She almost screamed, but managed to suppress it. Mr. Fox looked around where the hand had landed, but left it till later, and dragged the poor woman up the stairs, along the corridor, and through the little door to her fate. Lady Mary made her way quickly out of the castle and ran all the way home. The following day, everyone gathered for the wedding breakfast. Lady Mary, her brothers, Mr. Fox, all the fine people who lived in that area. Lady Mary and Mr. Fox sat opposite one another at the wedding breakfast, and Lady Mary said, "Mr. Fox, I had a strange dream last night." "Yes," said Mr. Fox, "you look a bit peaky, my dear. Why don't you tell us about your dream to entertain us until the moment of our nuptials?" "Very well, Mr. Fox," said Lady Mary. "In my dream, Mr. Fox, last night, I went to seek your castle in the deepest, darkest part of the forest. And when I found it, the drawbridge was down, the portcullis was up, and over the great gate I read the words, 'Be bold, be bold.'" "Ah," said Mr. Fox, "'tis not so, and 'twas not so." "I walked boldly through the gate, Mr. Fox, in my dream, and into the courtyard, and as there was nobody about, I made my way to the great door into your fine hall. And over the door I read the words, 'Be bold, be bold, but not too bold.'" "Ah," said Mr. Fox, "'tis not so, and 'twas not so. Mr. Fox, in my dream I went not too boldly through the door and into your fine hall. I climbed the great staircase and walked along the gallery until I came to that little door at the end. And over the door, Mr. Fox, in my dream, I read the words, 'Be bold, be bold, but not too bold, lest that thy heart's blood doth run cold.'" Mr. Fox said, "'Tis not so, and 'twas not so, and God forbid it should be so." In my dream, Mr. Fox, with my heart failing, I threw open the door, and there I saw all your previous wives, their bodies and their bones covered in blood. "Oh," said Mr. Fox, "'tis not so, and 'twas not so, and God forbid it should be so." In my dream, Mr. Fox, I ran along the corridor, the gallery. I began to run down the stairs, and there I saw you in the courtyard, dragging behind you a young woman, and she was young and fair and rich, and she had a great diamond ring upon her finger. "Oh," said Mr. Fox, "'tis not so, and 'twas not so, and God forbid it should be so." "Ah, Mr. Fox, in my dream I hid behind some old wine barrels, and from there I watched you drag this poor woman into your great hall, and she was young and fair and rich, and on her finger a great diamond ring that you sought to pull off, but you could not do so. And so you took your sword and you slashed off her hand with the ring upon it." "Oh," said Mr. Fox, "'tis not so, and 'twas not so, and God forbid it should be so." "Ah," said Lady Mary, "but 'tis so, and 'twas so, and here's the ring and hand to show. And she brought out the hand from a fold of her garment with the ring still upon it, and she pointed it at Mr. Fox. And Lady Mary's brothers, they drew their swords and they hacked Mr. Fox into 1,000 pieces.